Welcome to another episode of All Things in the Name of Love. And today I have with me Nazar Yasin. And we were talking a few minutes before I pressed record, and among other things, beautiful soul, already know that because I feel your energy. And you have been the co-founder and CEO of Soul app, which I just downloaded and I'm just starting to use. I think it's fascinating. It's for deepening your connection with yourself, with mental health and meditations and spiritual growth. And I love that you talked about purpose and profit because that's my term is conscious capitalism. And
I
I
like that term.
yeah, it's it was bouncing around in 2019, then COVID happened and it kind of has morphed a little bit, but I just so appreciate you and what you're doing. And I just want to ask you, like, tell me a little bit about your spiritual journey and how you came into this as a
Yeah,
person.
no, thanks so much, Sophia. No, it's really good to connect, and I can tell you're a warm, kind, loving soul as well, and look forward to many more conversations in the future. But thanks for having me on your podcast. My spiritual journey has been a long one. It's still continuing. It's I'm not at the end of my journey. I'm on the path, and
Mhm.
the path began when I was really, really young. I came from a family where purpose is just a really important kind of principle and kind of core pillar in our life. And so my grandfather on my father's side founded a country uh,
Wow.
called Libya, and then I'm half Greek and half Libyan, and then on my Greek side, several relatives have been prime minister of Greece in the past. So there's always been this kind of like, you know, um, let's say, focus on things bigger than you, right?
Mhm.
And trying to do things for your fellow humankind and try to do meaningful, positive things. And so that's just kind of, I guess, thrust upon, me as a kid. And then, as a kid, I went through a pretty tough period, childhood trauma, like an abuse period. And when something like that happens to you, it makes you ask big questions like, why did this happen to me? Like, why am I here? And that just kind of reinforced in me this idea that, I'm lucky to be alive and I got to earn it. Like every day
Mhm.
that I'm on this earth, I got to appreciate it, and I got to earn it. It's not about like what I'm taking from earth. It's like, what am I giving back? Like,
Mhm.
am I earning my keep here, as a
Mhm.
person on this planet? And this was like as a teenager, I kind of started thinking these thoughts. And then you have to live in this world, right? And you have to sort of, okay, well, how do I do this in this world that we live in? And I tried to learn as much as I could. I went to engineering school and law school and business school, and okay, let me learn about society and law and like business and engineering and how things work. And out of all that, I sort of came up with a thesis that seemed controversial at the time, but now is being more accepted, I think, which is this conscious capitalism. I love that turn of phrase you used. This idea of, we've kind of been fed this idea in the past where, either you're like a billionaire and you're a greedy, horrible person, you know, or you're a do-gooder and you're poor.
Right.
And why can't you thrive and help other people thrive at the same time? Like,
That
why is
makes
that
more sense to
so
me.
why is that so controversial?
Right.
Why is it sort of, you're either a missionary or a mercenary in life?
Mhm.
And I never wanted to make that choice. I just never wanted to make that choice. So I was like, I'm going to try to figure out ways where I don't have to make that choice. I'm going to try to find things that I can do to kind of like feel like I'm making a positive impact in the world and also, make money and be successful and be prosperous and, have abundance and all these things that all of us want as during our short times here on Earth. And so I've tried to do that throughout my career. I've been an internet entrepreneur and, was the CEO of this social network that grew to 100 million users and we got acquired for $1 billion. And then I was an investor at this big firm, Tiger Global, and investing in all these startups all around the world in these emerging markets. And then I started my own venture capital firm, Rise Capital, where we try to, we try to back what I refer to as underrepresented founders in underrepresented economies. And so, if you're lucky enough to live in Silicon Valley, You can access venture capital and kind of build, really interesting companies. But if you're not, if you were born in, the slums of Rio, or if you're born in Lagos, Nigeria, or Cairo, or parts of Mumbai, it's historically been really, really hard to build technology companies because you don't have access to the capital and you don't have access to all these other things that you might have in California, New York, and other places. So what we do is we invest in all these underrepresented founders in all these markets and try to help them solve these big challenges in those markets and make those markets nicer places while also making money. And Soul is, I guess, the latest iteration of my journey, which is, I found that a sense of purpose has helped me so much in life, to kind of find my way, just feeling like I have a purpose. And
Mhm.
then during COVID, when so many people I cared about were really suffering, my wife lost both her parents.
Mhm.
My dad got cancer. He sadly recently passed away as well. I had friends pass away. I had founders who I work with call me depressed during COVID because they're alone and they can't even go to the office and have a social life. And
Yeah.
why is it that our species is we're living longer than we've ever lived. We're richer than we've ever been. We're more powerful than we've ever been. We have things like AI and smartphones. And why is it that we're unhappier than we've ever been?
Mhm.
And that question kind of haunted me, during COVID. And the more I, dove into, the causal factors of this widespread loneliness pandemic and unhappiness epidemic and mental health crisis that's going on globally, the more the research indicated that the root cause of this was that people these days lack a sense of purpose. They lack a
Mhm.
sense of spiritual self. They don't know where they belong or
Yeah.
why they're alive. And there's many reasons for that, why it's harder to find one's own sense of purpose and spirituality these days. But that made me really think hard about it and say, well, if I can build a tool, that helps anybody anywhere in the world find their own purpose, then that's kind of maybe the ultimate manifestation of my purpose as somebody who's been seeking, to do something meaningful and helpful for humanity for a long time. So that's kind of been my journey and where I'm at on it so far.
I love that because like my greatest life purpose, and this can be triggering for some people, is to remember, and it's just a phrase, to fully remember and embody my Christ consciousness so that in doing so I can help others remember theirs.
Mm,
I don't
mm,
really fully understand what that means, other than I get to remember all the things because I know I'm an old soul. I know I have Palladian background. I know all these things that like my conscious mind is like, I don't get this, but I do know. And I mean, I'm definitely humanitarian. I love Mama Gaia. I love all innocence. And to be able to like get out of the way of like my background of like I've done corporate, I've done academia, not me, not me. And to find my deep, helping, because that's the drive. I think true humanitarians have that deeper, like this is nothing compared to what I'm being called to do. And to have that sense of joy in what you're doing and knowing that you're making a difference is like that's what connects us as humans is like when we find that niche and that drive to like go beyond the self to create the new.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's pretty clear you found, your path in life, right? You seem like, I mean, you could just see it, like looking in your eyes. You seem like the kind of person who's just, you're really at peace and engaged and joyful about what it is you're doing every day. And I think that's hard for people to find. It's especially in this world, right? We're bombarded by so much stuff, right? I mean, social media and, Twitter and all, it's just, you're just this flood of of information and messaging that, I'm not good enough more than anything else, right? It's like, how come I don't have that thing? How come I don't look that way? How come I don't this or that? And so it can become really distracting and really hard to find your own path in life. And but once you're able to find it, once you're able to go, sort of inside yourself and really take a hard look at like who you are, and like what am I good at and what am I not good at, and like, what really like lights me up and what sort of drains energy from me, right?
Mhm.
And once you can kind of hone in on those things and then look at the environment around you and say, okay, well, what is this opportunity I've been put into in life, right? I have these strengths and these weaknesses, and I'm in this particular situation. I'm in Colorado, or I'm in Chile, or I'm in, you know, you know, Nigeria, or Kenya. I'm in this particular situation, and I have these particular skills and these particular weaknesses and these particular things that animate me and these particular things that take energy from me. How can I apply myself in the best way in this context? And that's kind of like, I think that's the start to kind of finding purpose, right? Finding
Yeah.
purpose in life.
Well, and there's an interesting like because I know I've known this since I was little. I have more gifts than I think I can actually use in this lifetime, which is amazing. And
Lucky.
I know. I'm very grateful for it. So like trying to balance like the
I'm the opposite. I have like no gifts. So I'm literally just trying to do the best I can with like the tiny ounce of, minuscule talent I have. So,
well, for me, it's like I love one of the things I love to do is bake. I love baking, and right now I've been staying in a resort that doesn't have an oven. I'm like, because I'm like, I didn't make my sourdough this week. That's just a thing that I love to do. And but is that what I want to do all the time? No way. I get bored. I get tired. I get, I would resent it. So
mm,
I can have this gift as an example, this gift that I can do like a couple hours a week or something like that. And that fills that aspect of me. But then I get to help animals and I get to, you know, selfishly swim when I find a pool and, take care of myself and share what I do in the world with others without, and this is a weird thing because like most people have a thing. I don't. I have many. I'm like shiny object girl, but I'm focused.
no, that's awesome. And I think it's so good of you to recognize, what's the difference between like a hobby and a livelihood, right? And so, if there's something that you're good at, that you're passionate about, and that you can make an income from,
Mhm.
that's like a livelihood, right?
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
get all three, if you only hit two of those, it's probably more like a hobby. And so
Yeah.
that's like music for me. I love music. I love playing music. Am I good at it? Maybe not. Can I make money at it? Heck no. And so, that's a hobby, you know? Uh,
Yeah.
that's not a livelihood. But it sounds like you've arrived at similar conclusions and, found
Yeah.
a thing that works
Well,
best for you.
because it's like when you have these things, like, so I've been baking since I was 4. My grandmother like stood behind me on a chair and had me roll out dough and like test like it was a whole thing. She wanted me to remember that I was a baker. And so like I've been doing this for a long time. I just like I've thought about like what does it feel like to get up at 4 in the morning and make food for other people?
Right.
Can happen.
Yeah, 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 totally. Looking at the lifestyle that fits the talent that you have, right? So, yeah, I get it. I get it.
Yeah. So tell me what sort of how is Soul set up to help people?
Yeah. So yeah, I used to run a social network, and the way most social networks work is they try to use like the outside stimuli, the outside world stimuli. Like, right, take a picture of yourself and tag where you are, right? Oh, look at where I am, and look at what I'm eating, and look at what I'm wearing, and look at who I'm with, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And at Soul, we kind of flip that on its head and we say, well, who are you on the inside and how are you feeling? Like,
Mhm.
kind of person are you? Like, what sorts of things inspire you? What activities make you happy? You know,
Mhm.
what topics are on your mind? How are you feeling right now? And based on that, we basically organize the entire world of spirituality and purpose around you. And so
Wow.
if you say, I'm interested in Reiki, and I also like, Greek philosophy, and, I like meditation, and I'm also into some kind of like, Hindu astrology, Vedic astrology type of stuff. It's really hard to find, if you're into several things, which most of us are, right? Like our generation, I think this is the first generation in human history where we have options.
Mhm.
spiritually. Like historically, for 100,000 years,
Yeah.
we didn't have things like the internet. And so you grew up
Right.
in a place and there was a building in that place, and whatever your parents and the community did to feel purposeful and spiritual, that's kind of where you went to do all that. And
Mhm.
didn't
Mhm.
have any other options really. And so, we're the first generation that now has this like, oh wow, there's like other stuff out there. Like that sounds interesting. Oh, that's pretty cool. This thing that I was doing before, I'm not so into that so much anymore. And so,
Yeah.
like, where do you go to kind of like help yourself organize all that and like
Right.
your own rituals and your own kind of way of being purposeful and spiritual in life? And that's what soul is.
Mhm.
We're your spiritual companion. There's a little your soul, your SOL. By the way, it's spelled SOL. And so, your little soul avatar is like he's kind of like your little Jiminy Cricket slash Oracle of Delphi, and you can ask questions, and it glows brighter and bigger the more purposeful activities you do. And so you're encouraged to take
Mhm.
care of your soul, right? And to do things that are good for your soul. And
That's beautiful.
yeah, yeah. So, we try to make it fun, and just try to make it easy for anyone anywhere in the world to live a
Mhm.
more purposeful life. And
Mhm.
the reason for that is if the research is right, there's this phenomenal lady, Dr. Lisa Miller, who she's a professor at Columbia and she's New York Times bestseller, and her and several other researchers have seen what happens to your brain when you do purposeful activities, right? And what they've identified is that if you don't do purposeful activities in your life, you're 80% more likely to feel anxiety, depression, addiction, and to have thoughts of suicide. And so it's literally like the root cause of this like massive global unhappiness epidemic that we're witnessing is that people just feel lost. And I
Yeah.
guess it's kind of the flip side of the coin of like having too many options is if you have too many options, it's like having no options. You don't even know what to do, and so you don't do anything, right? And so, we're trying to solve that problem and try to hopefully make the world, a healthier, happier place.
I love that. When you mentioned the growing up with something, I grew up Protestant, and I remember my grandpa died, and I wanted to know how to pray, so I went to my minister. I'm like, "So how do you pray?" He's like, "You pray." I'm like, "That's not helping me." Because
Right.
that wasn't it, that doesn't help. You could just pray. Well, what does that mean? Like break that down for me. I'm 12. Like help me out here. And he couldn't. So like I get to high school, and like this is totally guided. Joseph Campbell gets interviewed by Bill Moyers on the
Mhm.
power of myth. For like
Mhm.
2 weeks, I come home from school, and for some reason PBS is on, and I'm watching Joseph Campbell, and like everything opened up. I was like,
Everything's a hero's journey, right? Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
totally.
it was just so fabulous because nothing made sense prior to that. And then I got the door open to like, oh, that's why.
Hmm.
And, I don't know how many people have that opportunity to get that experience when they're in their like high school. It didn't matter. I'm like, Joseph Campbell, yeah, I want him. Like, let's just have conversations with him because like nothing else really made sense.
Yeah.
And I
How,
think like people who are born, well, we're all born spiritual, but who remember that they're spiritual beings struggle with trying to fit into the paradigms that are ultimately illusions.
yeah. It's true, and for a long time now, even using the word spiritual has been like taboo, right?
Mhm.
If you use that word around certain people, they just kind of like, you can hear the cutlery suddenly at the dinner tables. Like the conversation stops because they're either imagining some woo-woo stuff or they're
Mhm.
imagining some, dark
Right.
arts kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And what it is neither one, right? I mean, the way that I try to explain what spirituality is to people. I'm an engineer and like a tech person and like a business person, and
Mhm.
I feel like I do a decent job of explaining things to those audiences, who
Mhm.
might have a harder time, getting in touch with their spiritual self. And what I explain to them is I'm like, look, when you try to make your body more physically fit, what is the activity that you do to do that? And they're like, exercise. And I'm like, right. And so you can exercise in many different ways. You could do push-ups at home. You could go on a walk with your dog. You could go play pickup basketball. You can exercise in a gazillion different ways.
Mhm.
Now, if you want to exercise in a specific way, right, with specific rules and regulations and maybe even specific uniforms and specific teams, that's called religion. And, so exercise is to sport, basically, what spirituality is to religion. And so
Mhm.
you can be spiritual, and all it is exercise for your brain, is what the
Mhm.
science says, right? I mean, all this research that's come out, McKinsey's talking about this, Harvard Medical School is talking about this now, it's just exercise for your brain. It's a way to exercise, in particular, your parietal cortex in your brain. When you do spiritual or purposeful activities, you exercise
Mhm.
that part of your brain, and that reduces the incidence of anxiety and depression and addiction and suicide and a whole bunch of other things. And so why not do it? You know,
That's
why not do
me.
it? So, uh, yeah, but it can be hard. It can be hard to, find the right type of exercise to do, the right type of
Mhm.
spiritual exercise to do, and it can also be hard to even engage in the subject matter these days because it's become a taboo subject. But I feel like that's getting better, don't you? I feel like people are talking
I
about.
think more people are waking up to it. Like I felt a shift like since 2020 to now. There's definitely more awareness of it, even if people aren't like fully conscious of it. There's like they know there's something more out there than just their 9 to 5 job.
Mhm.
And I think that's the unintended consequence of COVID is like it shook up the illusion.
Yeah, big time. I remember just these amazing images of, all of a sudden in India from New Delhi, they could see the mountains for the first time, right? All of a sudden there's dolphins in the canals in Venice, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
You see jaguars like running through the hotels in the Mayan Riviera again, and you're like, whoa, like we sort of constructed all these things and assumed life was a certain way, but if we just pause, even just
Mhm.
for a little bit, like there's like another, there's another reality out there. And so,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Like I've gotten to the point where well, trees have always talked to me, like not really conversation. Well, until I went to Orcas Island, trees just like gave me an energy nudge to like come hug me or something like that.
ooh,
And in Orcas, they actually have conversations because I can't even explain Orcas Island. It's just magical. But what I've seen is like in the past year, and this is going on with the animals too, is like they're tired of just like holding space for us because
mm,
everything is alive. Everything talks. Boulders talk, trees talk, everything talks. And they're like, okay, we got to help. Like we got to like get past the like quiet nudge. We actually need to have conversations with if you're open to it, of course. But like animals, oh my gosh, animals are like, we're done with the emotional support stuff. We're just done with that. You humans need to do it on your own.
right.
Love you dearly, but like we're dying because you can't do your emotional processing. So we're gonna stop that now.
Yeah, yeah, big time. No, and it must be so fascinating for you in particular, because I mean, you're, yeah, incredibly empathetic. You're an empath with animals, and so you must be able to, sense things from them that most people can't. So it must be particularly jarring for you to,
It can be.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I had a dog about a year and a half ago down in Mount Shasta, and he was with his humans, and he just looked at me. He's like, "Could you help a brother out?" And I'm like, "Oh, honey, of course I can." So my friend put up an energetic block for the humans, so they couldn't feel what I was doing with the dog, and I just like broke the contract. Well, he asked me to break the contract of being the emotional support dog because he was like literally like heavy from her emotional stuff. And it was only like 5 or 10 minutes because we didn't want any attention drawn and he was aware of that. And so we get done and he like pulls her towards me and he just sits there like right in front of me like thank you. I can't even tell thank you so much. Thank you. Like he's like that. And she's like, oh yeah, he's my emotional support dog. And now he's like,
Did you get the look? Like, what are you talking about?
he just gave me a look like, not anymore.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. And they're all just, and everything right now, because like I'm sure you have a sense of it at some level. We're shifting.
Hmm.
Like consciousness is shifting. Like I pay attention to the Schumann resonance and the solar flares. I'm because I feel it.
Hmm.
I'm feeling shifts in my beingness. I have the opportunity to shift a whole bunch of like ancestral stuff right now that I'm not excited about, but I'm doing anyways. Um, because we're ascending into the light bodies that we've been meaning to get to for thousands of years.
Hmm. I mean, it sounds like you're really optimistic about like the direction that we're going
Yeah.
as a spiritually,
Oh yeah,
which
like this
great
is
to hear.
chaos. What we have right now is chaos.
That's great to hear, because I mean, man, I hear so much pessimism. It's refreshing and wonderful to hear an optimistic take on things, you
We
know.
get to choose how we show up. We get to, I've seen what I get to do in the future, and I'm like, I get to do that. That's so amazing. So why wouldn't I want to bring that into my field? Like, yeah,
Mm.
there's chaos, there's distortions, there's like old things crumbling and all that stuff. And ultimately, we need to get rid of the old before the new can start.
It's just part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just part of the journey. No, that's fascinating. So it sounds like you have some clairvoyance, like you can kind of see things before they happen.
Have since I was little, tried to block it for a while.
Really?
Because it's kind of scary. But like I feel it. It's more like a claircognizance, I think it is, like where I feel it coming into my field. I mean, I see it, but I feel it more than I see it. And like the magic of what I feel. Like I was in on the Oregon coast a few months ago, and I was on a hike, and I actually saw this while I'm walking by, and it was the air making that. And I'm like, that was a frequency shift. That was a dimensional shift.
Hmm.
Fully cognizant. I'm just like having this amazing experience on this magical hike that I can definitely feel fairies, even though I've never seen one. And I saw the air move like that twice. And I'm like, okay, I can't fake that.
Like air shimmered kind of thing, like sort
Yeah.
of matrix shimmering type of thing.
Hmm.
Wow, that's amazing.
So yeah, I mean it's shifting. It's like we're the ones that are like the ones that aren't aware of it yet. Everything else is like, okay, let's go into the new earth. And and that's what I feel. And so yeah, I mean, it really is what you focus on. I choose to focus on what I want to bring in. I don't choose to focus on what is.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm not ignoring it. I'm not spiritually bypassing. I'm just like, yeah, that's there. This is what I'm going towards.
Hmm. Interesting. I think that's so on point. We're far more in control of our own reality than we give ourselves credit for,
Mhm,
and all it takes is like a little self introspection to realize that there are certain stories we all tell ourselves on a daily basis
mhm.
that aren't necessarily true,
Right.
right? And if you can just change the narrative of some of those stories, you can change your life in a pretty profound kind of way. So it sounds like you've cracked the code on that, and
A lot of somatic work,
yeah, that's
a
cool.
lot of crying.
Healthy. Crying is healthy.
Yeah.
It's so cathartic. You know,
Mhm.
my father passed away about almost 2 weeks ago now, and
Oh,
so
wow.
I was yeah, no, thank you. I was in Greece for his
Mhm.
funeral last week,
Mhm.
and man, I cried. Jeez, I cried until there was like no tears left,
Mm.
and it felt good to cry, especially to cry with people around you who you love and care for, who are going through
Mhm.
a similar thing. It's very cathartic,
Yeah.
very so crying's good. Crying's good. Helps you get through the journey, helps you get through the pain, and in the pain you find growth.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
learn things from the pain that you experience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And to like I think the lowest frequency is shame,
Mm,
scale of energies. And so when you can actually, if you have shame, which I'm sure we all do, to go into, as my friend Angela says, the deep pit of the garbage can where all the sludge is, that's where shame is.
mm,
To actually look at that part of us and to hold space for it.
yeah.
Part of us. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just there was a point in our lives where we felt shame. because we weren't something we others expected us to be or something like that. And to just hold space for that and honor that feeling and then allow the feelings to flow without getting attachment to the actual feeling, it's pretty profound.
Yeah. And sludge, you got away with words. Sludge is a great way of describing the feeling of shame, isn't it? It's such a great
Mhm.
way of describing it. It feels like sludge. It's just this thick, gooey, disgusting thing that you feel in the pit of your stomach. It's sludge. I like that. It's a great descriptor of that emotion.
Thank you. I do love English.
It's really great.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to get
Mhm.
you some of our, our marketing stuff at Soul. Hey, Sophia, which word should we use here? Picking some good words.
Do you have a sludgy feeling in the base of your
Right. Yeah.
stomach?
Wow. Feeling kind of shameful. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all about like self-exploration. And one of the things I found, because you're talking about distractions, now I work really hard. I meditate daily, I chant daily, and I had this perception because I have a friend named Nate Zelenik, and he has a breathing practice. It's really, really powerful. And I've known Nate for over a year. He was on my podcast. He always invites me to his free stuff. I'm like, yeah, I love working with you, Nate. Yesterday and today, I finally did the whole thing. And I'm like, I finally did it because I wasn't ready before.
Mm,
So,
mm.
like, bringing in grace when you bring in new practices is also a big deal.
There's a time for everything. Yeah. Sometimes you're just not ready for something when it first arrives. And
Mhm.
when it circles back and you're ready for it, you're like, oh wow. Okay. I
Yeah.
yeah, this really hits. It's so interesting, So many people go through life like not really having let's say a conversation with the universe. They just sort of it's just sort of like, this is what I want my life to be like. This is the life I'm gonna have. And I'm just gonna
Mhm.
do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And they just
Mhm.
march down that path. But sometimes you hear things from life where, it's like, hey, you know, check this out. Or hey, let me nudge you over this way. And
Mhm.
not paying attention to those things, like you can really miss some really amazing gifts and presents that appear in your path, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Like I know yesterday, because I'm working through this beautiful aspect of my 6-week-old self, who's got combination of abandonment, because I was in traction when I was 6 weeks old because my right hip wasn't fully formed. So the whole bunch of trauma. And I've dealt with this on different levels. It's just on a deeper level. The avoidance she does is fascinating. Like yesterday, I was on my phone all day. I'm like, really? Not going to do any somatic work? No, no, I don't want to do somatic work because if I do somatic work, I'm going to feel.
Mm,
But I have the awareness to know that that's what I'm doing because I've spent enough time learning about my distractions, and that's my addiction is distractions. So like when I see the addiction come up, I'm like, I wonder what's going on. And then I tune in. It's like, oh, okay, she doesn't want to do this today. Okay, you get a day because I know
right.
this is hard for you because you're 6 weeks old and trying to access the unconscious of a 6-week-old is a thing. Um, and today, we're doing the somatic work. And I cried and I was like, just, because like I was ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's all about preparing yourself for the right thing to arrive at the right moment, I suppose.
And having compassion for yourself when you go into those old patterns. Because if you're birthing a new self, there's a lot of old programs that are coming in there that are trying to keep you from that new self.
Yeah. I always find my crutch in life is always science. Like I just, like I like knowing what we know and what we can prove, and then that informs my ability to try to make sense of what we don't know, which is most of everything, right?
Yeah.
We can literally only explain 5% of the universe, right? Like if you add up all the atoms and subatomic particles and everything, galaxies and neutron stars and black holes and everything, that only accounts for 5% of the mass energy of the universe. The other 95% is like, we don't know, right?
Right.
So we sort of kid ourselves into into thinking that we know what's going on in this universe, but we don't. But the
Yeah.
little that we do know can really help to point you in the right direction as far as understanding what you don't know.
Hmm.
And I find it so interesting because, you know, when you think about changing, like you're talking about, like changing and getting rid of bad habits and things, I sat down and I was like, okay, so how many of our atoms do I have right now that I was born with? Like what percentage of the atoms that my body consists of?
No, because we regenerate every so often.
I mean, we lose 98% of our atoms every
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
like every year.
I
And
know, I know. And it's like, so what do we retain?
yeah, and
But
like
then there's epigenetics.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so when we regenerate, are we regenerating the epigenetic stuff?
exactly.
I don't know.
So I mean, there's nothing like on the one hand that gives you a lot of hope because you're like, I can become a new, like literally a new person within a year. If I
Mhm.
make small changes today, quite literally in a year's time, I can be a completely different person. But there's that piece that you don't know what's going on. That's what we can measure. What about the
Yeah.
stuff we can't measure? What else is kind of like influencing me? What are these narratives and stories in my head? What are these epigenetic factors? What are
Mhm.
some other factors that we don't even understand? Destiny. I mean, these are just huge
Oh
topics.
yeah.
What do we, you know, um, and it's so interesting to think about those things through the lens of, but I still have hope to be a different person next year. I can still make changes today that can make me the person I want to be tomorrow, in
Mhm.
spite of these things I don't understand.
Oh
Anyways,
yeah.
I always think that's such an interesting kind of, you know, seesaw battle between what we know and what we don't know. And there's so much hope, and also, it's also such a slap in the face sometimes too about what you can and can't do in life. You know.
Okay, so based on so I love going down rabbit holes, and over the course of the past 4 years, I've gone down several rabbit holes. And what I've come to realize is that my dissertation is based on what I thought was history.
Hmm.
I don't know
Hmm.
if it's actually history.
Interesting way of phrasing it. Yeah. What you
So
thought
I
was.
have a PhD based on things I knew back in 2006. Um, is it really real? I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
because we
No,
don't know so much.
it's so true. And I have this conversation with my kids. I'm a dad, and I have a 14, soon to be 15-year-old daughter, and a 12-year-old
Awesome.
year old. And they're learning things in history as well. And
Yeah.
okay, this battle happened, and this thing
Battles are
happened.
good for passwords.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
all they're good for. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's all they're good for.
yeah, totally, totally. But it's a conversation in our house. Is like, okay, well, like what really happened here? Like, okay,
Mhm.
like why was Napoleon doing what he's doing? Is he a bad guy or a good guy or a little bit of both? Or let's just think about it. Like,
Yeah.
what was he doing? Like, what were the circumstances that he and his countrymen were in that made him go on this path that led to these things and his eventual defeat at Waterloo, right?
Mhm.
And he was painted as a terror by the Brits, painted as a hero by the French. Like, who was right, right?
Right.
So it's so interesting to sort of think through those things because the person who ends up victorious in those battles tends to write history through their own lens, right?
Mhm.
And it can really shape your own perception of why we are where we are as a species.
Right. And one of the things I studied was because I was curious about separation since I was little, because I didn't get it. I don't get separation because like animals were my friends. They weren't like just pets. They were actual friends that I had a conversation with. And so like to get separation was like, why does this exist? And so I actually pretty much got my PhD in separation through the lens of cultural history to understand um, how culture is created.
Oh wow, how interesting.
Yeah.
So how from I guess a single human DNA family, things have been separated into multiple cultures. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I use the radio station logs to understand the dynamics between rural and urban culture,
Okay.
to understand how the programming was influenced by both the networks, the regional and the local, to get a better sense of who lived in Maine and what they listened to, so I could understand the agency and the interplay between the radio station and the listeners.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because I wanted to understand, like, why, like how, for example, electricity in 1906 in Bangor, Maine happened, but in a town away from the river, they didn't get it till 1940.
Oh, wow.
That's a big cultural divide.
That's a huge divide. Yeah. 40
Yeah,
plus years. Electricity,
yeah.
not electricity. Yeah.
So like, so understanding that, and then like how did that influence what we currently see in the separation between urban and rural life?
Mhm.
And it's still an illusion. Um, but they're carefully crafted different mechanisms that create that division to
Mm.
keep us separate instead of realizing that we're all ultimately connected because we have quantum entanglement and we're just different aspects of that same energy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so fascinating. I'd like a copy of your dissertation.
If I can find it.
No, it sounds
I think I still have it. I didn't publish it because like that was a whole the whole thing that I didn't feel the need to do. I love myself too much.
but it's another area where, at least for me, like the science behind things like really helps to articulate like why is compassion a good thing? Like why
Mhm.
should you be compassionate? Right? Because compassion is a choice,
Yeah, it is.
you know, and it's not an easy choice.
Mm-mm.
It's a lot easier to just troll somebody on Twitter than to actually go and get up and try to help somebody, right? I
Mhm.
mean, that's hard. Like that requires effort.
Yeah.
And so, like, why does compassion make sense? It makes sense scientifically because ultimately, and you talked about this with quantum entanglement, ultimately, scientifically, we can prove we all ultimately came from the same point in time and the
Mhm.
same speck of dust, which is referred to as the Big Bang. And if quantum entanglement is correct, which it is, has been proven to be correct, any subatomic particles that have been in close contact with each other are permanently entangled in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
You do this, and you're tickling an alien, in a
Yeah.
galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
And so, like, it makes sense to be compassionate because by being compassionate, you're actually helping your own person,
Mhm.
your own extended version of you. Really, you're helping yourself by being kind to
And
others.
to bring that within oneself, to show compassion to self. I mean, that's something we've never been taught.
Yeah.
Like, how do I show up for my inner child in a
Mhm.
way that's like meeting her where she needs me to meet her, not where I want her to meet her. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like that level of self-awareness and depth of the more I'm compassionate with myself, the more I can be compassionate with others.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Looking at yourself and being still enough, being bored enough to spend time with yourself,
Yeah.
like go doom scrolling or whatever, just to pass the time, is super hard,
Yeah.
especially in this day, right? Like that act of reflection
Yeah.
is super hard and needs to be super intentional. But once you carve out the space and the time to do that, the rewards are enormous because then you
Mhm.
realize, what your inner self is all about and what you actually need in life. Like, what are the things that you actually need in life? What are the things you need to address?
Mhm.
And that's once you figure that out, like it feels like you have a superpower, it really
Yeah.
does.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because like that is the gold. Like I know for a fact, since I'm so sensitive, I get overstimulated quickly. I just
Mm,
do. And so a couple months ago, I was at some place and I had the opportunity to feel into the energy, and I ended up holding like light in an area that was getting divided. And after the conversation, other people wanted to talk to me because I'm like glowing because I carry so much light. I'm like, I I have my capacity. I like literally held space for like 100 people. and kept the light where it was going to go dark. I need to go and just recharge now.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
the world would be so much better if everybody had that level of self-awareness.
100%, 100%. You
Yeah.
know, my brother, we went through this hard time of the last few weeks with my dad passing, and my brother, would take turns sleeping in the hospital with my dad, and my
Mm,
brother was going on like day three in a row, and I was like, you need to recharge. Like,
yeah.
you can't be strong for dad and mom if you're weak, right?
Yeah.
If you're not charged, like you need to recharge yourself. You want to be this person who's being strong for our parents, and that's very admirable. And
Mm,
I admire your compassion and your sense of duty as a son. But you need to recharge yourself if you're going to try and be strong for everybody else. And
yeah.
it's hard to develop that self-awareness where you can flip that switch and be like, okay, wait a second, I'm
Mhm.
overextending here. Like I need some me time. I need to do the things that recharge me, right?
Yeah.
And then figuring out what are the things that recharge you. That's a whole other story, right? That's sort of like
Yeah.
self-introspection. Like what are the activities, what are the things, what are the specific rituals, if you will, that like help me recharge and be the best version of me. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can figure that out, like it's, you're literally half the way there.
I think a general all of humanity good one is like just grounding.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like if barefoot or laying on the ground for like at least 10 minutes. I prefer an hour, but I have snow right now, so that's not going to happen.
All right. I did a very good grounding, but I have frostbite now. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I have a grounding pad in the bed, so like
that's good.
that'll
That's
work for me. But yeah, like that's just a go-to for me, especially if I go for a hike and then I ground.
good.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah, my wife's very much the same way. Like she really likes grounding. I think it's the wonderful thing about spirituality, and one of the things that we try to, make soul a part of really is that there's no one way to be spiritual. There's no one way to connect with yourself and with something greater.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a natural meditator, for example. Like my mind is way too active to meditate. Like I drive myself nuts trying to meditate.
Mhm.
My meditation is either playing music or
Mhm.
going on a run in nature. Because when I'm on a run
Mhm.
in nature, I'm just looking at birds and trees and some water and I'm hearing my breath and my footfalls, and it's just me and my thoughts, and I'm present. I'm like right
Yeah.
there. It's not a traditional meditation, but it's my way of meditating.
Yeah.
My wife is, she tends to be like a kumbaya kind of person. Like she likes to hold your hand and look in your eyes and help you. And, in that moment, she feels spiritually alive. Other people
Mm.
meditate, other people pray, other people, are spiritual through food, other people are spiritual through art. There's no one way. And
Right.
so, if grounding's your thing, that's amazing. It's amazing. Do
Yeah.
it, as often as possible, for an hour, not in the snow, but
No.
uh, I think it's great. There's no one right way to be spiritual, and the science again proves that there's no one way to be spiritual. So
Well, since we all are spiritual and there's 1,000 ways to get there, it doesn't really matter which way you take.
yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally, yeah.
No, shoot. Lucky at that. Dang it. We've already blown through an hour. Okay. So I'm clearly enjoying the conversation, but I'm also aware of time. So I'm going to ask you the question that I always get guided to ask at the end of the podcast is how do people find you?
Oh yeah, please feel free to go to our website, getsoul.app, GETSOL.app, and download Soul, give it a try. Hopefully, it'll be a really useful spiritual companion for you on your journey and help you live a more purposeful life going forward, which turns into a happier, healthier life going forward. So that's the best way to to get in touch and um, yeah, really appreciate being on the program, and I've loved this conversation. It's been really,
Oh,
really
me
great.
too. We'll definitely have to have some more.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it, and try to hunt up that dissertation. I'd love to read it.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, and your beingness, and all of the work you do in the world.
Thank you, Sophia. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Me too.
Bye bye.